24th, 2012, and we're going to have a roll call.
Calling the roll, Mr. Brady. Mr. Germana.
Here.
Mr. Gallagher.
Here.
Mr. Schron.
Here.
Ms. Conwell.
Here.
Mr. Jones.
Here.
Mr. Rogers.
Here.
Ms. Simon.
Here.
Mr. Greenspan. Mr. Miller. Ms. Connolly. We have a quorum.
Madam Clerk, at this time, I'm going to move to excuse C. Ellen Connolly, our president, from attendance at today's meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
And we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, at this point at our meeting, we have a time for silent meditation, and nobody's come up with any particular item today, so I would like all of us to reflect on something personal. And I just want to throw this out there. Today we're going to be talking to our top dog winner, and I just want to mention what's important to me is the amount of animals that are being killed throughout this country because of homeless. Their families have moved out, and the shelters are just packed, and they're getting killed at record numbers. And this is a disgrace, I think, that at this point in our country we're still doing that. But with that being said, that's going to be my reflection, but everybody can reflect on their own personal issue. Thank you. Do we have any public comment related to the agenda, Madam Clerk?
No, Madam Vice President.
Okay, we're going to proceed then. I'm going to move something on the agenda from number 18. Exciting piece of our program tonight. We're going to move number 18, which is our top dog essay contest winner, Troy Schick, who's going to come forward, and we would like to recognize him, and I've asked him to read his essay. Background for all of you who haven't heard it a million times, when we were preparing for this contest, this is the first time this has happened in our county, where we've invited all children to come with certain age 1 through 5 to write an essay about why their dog is top dog. And Troy is our extraordinary essay writer and winner. Mm-hmm. So Troy, you have your microphone?
Yep.
Troy, I'm going to introduce you first. Tell us what school you go to.
Brookview.
Which one? Brookview?
Yeah, Brookview.
And that's in which city? Brook Park?
Yeah.
Okay, and your council representative here is Mr. Miller, correct? And we're very proud of you that you wrote such a good essay. And what grade are you in?
First.
First grade. Okay, so you ready to go for it?
Yes.
Okay, Troy.
My dog Coco is the best. She likes to play catch and wrestle with me and my brothers. She even likes to take baths. She is friendly to all my neighbors too. I am so glad Mom rescued her from the shelter. She is the best friend, my best friend.
Up for 1 minute because I want to give you our county pin. And by the way, Troy's dog now wears the #1 dog license in the county.
Oh.
Okay, so it's just a quick, different thing we're going to do today is because we have honored our top dog essay writer, I wanted for all our council and staff to have an opportunity to share their photos with their pets, and wanted to go forward with that now. Those are all the top dog winners in the contest. We were at the county kennel to give the awards. Whose dog is that? Mr. Gallagher?
Mr. Gallagher's, the next
If you can
four.
give it-
Stand that line, Barney. Kitty. Booger.
Booger.
Bumper. He's white.
What's your dog's name, Joe?
Georgie.
Who's that? That's our Nikki. Our clerk. What's your dog's name? Bella. Jean Schmatzer, his new puppy. Don't know the name. Our president, C. Ellen Connolly, both of her rescue dogs. Julian Rogers, what's your dog's name? Millhouse. Rescue Mill.
All the names I wouldn't expect.
Okay, Mr. Miller, what do you have there? That's his turtle.
And that's King.
All right. That's my dog Sahara, County Kennel Rescue. And our executive, and his pet ferret. I don't know if everybody knows the story, how our executive has a special fondness for ferrets, and when he was in Lakewood, made sure that they were be able to be had as pets in the city. So there we have it. Do they have names? No. Okay. So thank you, everybody, for submitting your pictures.
Madam Vice President, if I could just take a moment to please recognize the attendance of Council Member Greenspan.
And he was going to bring a picture of what? You were going to submit a picture of dog pajamas or something? Mr. Fitzgerald took mine. Okay. Okay, thank you very much. We're going to move forward now and ask if anybody has a motion to approve the minutes from January 10th, 2012.
Second.
Minutes approved. Message from our executive.
Thank you. And there is a person on my staff who I know is at least partially responsible for that, and he'll be saying his goodbyes to you later. During the moment of silence, you said we could think about whatever we wanted, so I was thinking about the announcement that we were going to lose state funding for the Inner-Belt Bridge project. So I just wanted to talk about that for a moment, if I could. And I want to encourage the council to get engaged with us and with the state and with the federal government on this entire project. And I want to assure the council and the public that we're not accepting that decision as a given or as a fait accompli. And we're fortunate, I think, that our Public Works Director, Bonnie Tewin, is very well versed on the project and intimately aware of the details of the funding system and that ODOT uses, that was used in the past in order to delineate spending that was supposed to be used on that project, and where we can go from here. And I won't use up too much time by getting into all those details, but I want you to know that she's available to council if council is interested in having a public hearing on it. I guess that gets to the heart of my biggest complaint with this whole process, and that is that there was a public commitment that was made by the Strickland administration that this project was going to be funded from state money. Now, there was a discussion at the time because the stimulus package had just been passed by the federal government, and there was a question about whether or not federal stimulus funds could be used for the Inner-Belt Bridge project. And the decision that was made at the time was that it did not qualify for the stimulus funds because it wasn't a shovel-ready project. It had too long of a time frame because of the complexity of it to be designed before you could actually put shovels in the ground, so to speak. That was a long time ago. I mean, that was in 2009, basically, in the 2009, 2010 time frame. The commitment that was made by the state at the time was that the federal funds would free up state dollars that otherwise would have had to be funded by, projects could be done with federal funds that otherwise would have had to be done by state projects. That would free up additional state funds that could then be used for the Interbelt Bridge project. The Interbelt Bridge project, as I'm sure you're all aware, is not a would like to have project. It is a must-have project. It has to be done. It has to be done for safety reasons. It has to be done for economic development reasons. It has to be done for convenience reasons, any number of reasons. And it doesn't make sense for us to be making multi-billion-dollar investments in downtown and then stalling the critical artery to downtown at the same time. It makes no sense whatsoever. The fact that the decision, I understand right now there's a lot of finger pointing going on where the current administration is blaming the previous administration, but there was no dialogue with my office, and I would assume with council people, that this decision was going to be dropped on the county basically like a bomb from the governor's office. None. And there are so many economic decisions that are riding on this. There are businesses right now that are making a decision about whether or not they're going to invest in downtown Cleveland, where this project is directly going to have bearing on that. And the fact that this is a surprise after the current administration has been in office for more than a year, and that they decided to just announce this publicly with no strategy of how it's going to, that the disastrous effects were going to be avoided, I think is just outrageous. It is just outrageous. And that doesn't even get into, even if everything that Governor Kasich said was true about whose fault it was, the fact that it was communicated in this way was just kind of launched into the public. And now we're going to have a discussion about how it's going to be avoided without any previous, prior discussions with a game plan for how to avoid it, is just completely unacceptable. Now, I met with the, and I've never criticized the state administration in those terms before, but I can't believe that this unfolded the way that it did. I met with some of our local state delegation along with Director Tewin about this late last week, some of our state senators and Armand Budish and others, and they've committed to have some public hearings to try to unravel this and get to the bottom of it. And that's one thing, is try to figure out how did we get here. And the second thing is to try to have a really open discussion about how we're going to get out of it. The only discussion, or the only proposed solution that I have heard is the proposed privatization of the turnpike. Now, that is an issue that we haven't had any real public discussions of in this county. Other counties in Ohio have, who feel that who are concerned about the disposition of the turnpike. I have started to have a dialogue with some of my colleagues in county government across the state. There are approximately, I think it's around 15 or so counties that the turnpike runs through. And we are going to have some discussions about whether or not it would make sense for the counties themselves to begin to study this, the proposals for the turnpike, as opposed to just defaulting to whatever the research is of the current state administration. Now, the governor's office has said that they didn't intend on the two issues being linked. In other words, they're not saying, well, your bridge isn't going to be built or it's going to be delayed until 2026, and that therefore the only way you should favorably consider the privatization of the turnpike. However, they haven't offered any other solution for how it could conceivably be built. There's no other strategy that I've heard of, that I've heard them advance. So they've basically foreclosed, as far as I've heard, they have foreclosed any other strategy for the project to be built on time, except for the fact that if the turnpike went forward, and generated a couple $2 billion worth of capital, that then those projects could be funded. So you can draw your own conclusions about whether those things are linked. I do not believe that it is a coincidence that they announce it in January at the same time that the study is getting underway by KPMG to decide whether or not it makes sense for the turnpike to be privatized. I don't see what other conclusion could be the logical person could draw from those facts. So I would encourage all the council members to either join with me in a coordinated effort or whatever hearings that you think might be appropriate to really have a full public explication of this issue. I think harm has already been done, to be honest with you, because again, I think there's economic decisions that some people are going to be more hesitant to make until this situation is resolved. So one of the things that capital requires before it is invested, as we have said in many of our Economic Development Committee meetings and elsewhere, is that the private sector needs certainty. What this did before they want to invest their private dollars. I'm not whether or not the turnpike ends up being privatized, whether or not individual members of the council think that's a good idea or a bad idea. What we should all agree on is that this uncertainty is unhealthy for economic development in this area, and we need to lift that cloud of uncertainty as soon as we possibly can. So I look forward to a partnership with the council on this, and you'll also be hearing from me probably in the next week or so in terms of some of these conversations I've had with county commissioners across northern Ohio that are having discussions surrounding this issue. That's it. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much for updating us, and I think we're all most of us on the same page about this. And what I'd like to do, do you have a comment?
Madam Chair, I'm just wondering if Bonnie Tewan could brief the Public Works Committee this Thursday. We have a meeting scheduled, and this would be a good time. And then any council member that couldn't make that meeting at 11 o'clock would be able to get the stream.
That's fine, Mr. Germano, but I was going to say that I think this is so important. I think that the council as a whole should have a meeting, and that would include the economic development, public works, all of us that are going to be impacted in our districts and our presidents. That's up to the chair of public works about whether director will attend. But in addition to that, I really think when our president gets back, if we're going to have a meeting.
Madam
Mr. Brady?
Chairman, I'd like to second your thought that, with all due respect to the chairman of Public Works, that a committee of the whole would be the right venue, and that we should work with the administration about setting it up sooner rather than later, I would think.
The only other thing I'd add, Madam Chair, is just that that in addition to Bonnie's participation, Ed Jurce has some knowledge about this issue too, both as a legislator, but then also he's serving currently as the chairman of NOACA. He's my representative on NOACA and was chosen as the chairman of NOACA. And I'm sure he'd like to give you the viewpoint in terms of coming from NOACA. This was a surprise to NOACA too, by the way, which is supposed to be the coordinating agency for infrastructure projects in northern Ohio, and they were blindsided by it as well. So I'll make him available to the council as well.
Thank you. And maybe at the end of this meeting, we can talk about maybe next Tuesday. I think time's of the essence if we don't have anything scheduled to have a special meeting, but I'll leave that up to this body at the end of our meeting. Okay, thank you, Mr. Executive. So we're going to move on to item number 8, committee reports and consideration of motions of council for second reading adoption under suspension of rules. I move that we suspend the rules for the next 2 items. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Rules moved in, seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, rules are suspended. Madam Clerk.
Motion 2012-0002, a motion confirming the county executive's appointment of Edna Fuentes Casiano to serve on the Cuyahoga County Public Library Board of Trustees and declaring necessity that this motion become immediately effective.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilman Conwell.
Yes, I would just like to let my colleagues know that this is a 7-year term that sits on these for the appointments. And Mrs. Cassiano, she presented well, and she is committed to serving the full 7 terms to this board.
Thank you. Any comments or questions about this appointment? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
We need a motion.
I move to adopt.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next one.
Motion 2012-0003, a motion confirming the county executive's appointment of Barbara J. Thomas to serve on the Office of Homeless Services Advisory Board and declaring a necessity that this motion become immediately effective.
To adopt.
Second.
Moved in second. Any discussion from our chair, the committee?
Yes, I'd just like to, the committee as a whole to know that our committee recommends Councilwoman Thomas to serve on this board. In her presentation, she clearly expressed her passion for assisting the homeless and finding solutions for the problem, and not just sitting back doing nothing. So we recommend that she get appointed.
Mr. Rogers?
I'd like to be added as a sponsor.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, it's been moved, it's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, passed. Number 9, consideration of a resolution of council for first reading and referral to committee. Madam Clerk.
Resolution 2012-0011, a resolution proclaiming the month of May of each year as Multiple Chemical Sensitivity Awareness Month in Cuyahoga County and declaring a necessity that this resolution become immediately effective.
Okay, this is going to go into Mr. Rogers' Environmental and Sustainability Committee. Next item 10, consideration of resolutions for first reading, adoption under suspension of rules. I move we suspend the rules pursuant to 9D, 12A for items A and B.
Second.
All in favor of suspension of rules?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, rules are suspended. Madam Clerk.
Resolution 2012-0012, a resolution amending the 2012-2013 biennial operating budget for 2012 by providing for additional fiscal appropriations from the general fund and other funding sources, for appropriation transfers between budget accounts, and for cash transfers between budgetary funds in order to meet the budgetary needs of various county departments, offices, and agencies, and declaring the necessity that this resolution become immediately effective.
Move to adopt.
Okay, motion's been moved in second. All in favor? Okay, you want to speak to this, Mr. Chair?
Madam President, there is one item of significance that I think everybody on council should be fully aware of, and I would like if Director Rubino could come forward and if he could give us an explanation of the additional money required for the Gateway debt service and why this is.
Certainly, Mr. Rubino.
Matt Rubino, Office of Budget Management. The first item under Section 1, which is a request for additional appropriation of $1.5 million, that is to fully fund the county's contribution to Gateway debt service. If you recall, during budget discussions last year, we talked about impacts of the MBA lockout. We had suggested a recommended appropriation level of $3.5 million, knowing that there would be further impacts resulting from the MBA lockout. And we had some additional dollars on reserve but not appropriated. We know the full amount of the county's contribution to Gateway debt service, and I provided you a summary of the county's contribution history over the past 10 years for Gateway debt service. So you can see on that table, I'll explain how we're coming up with the amount. For 2012, the total annual debt service for the county's outstanding debt on the Gateway, which is the Quicken Loans Arena, is $8.9 million. There is a pledge fund held by a trustee bank that accumulates revenue that's derived from the Quicken Loans Arena, admission tax. We also receive an annual contribution from Positively Cleveland in the way of a bed tax per the agreement that was struck back in the early 90s. This year, the difference between annual debt service and the revenue available is our contribution, which is just under $5.1 million, slightly higher than previous years. A substantial portion of the increase is attributable to the loss of revenue from the MBA lockout. Came in at just under $900,000 impact from the lockout. We lost 3 months. That entire 3-month loss of admission taxes, foregone admission taxes to games at the Quicken Loans Arena directly impacts the county's contribution level. Less revenue from admission tax, the more the county general fund is on the hook for. In this case, that $900,000 is part of this additional request. The additional request gets the appropriation for that pledge contribution to the $5,091,000 you see on the bottom line of that table. If it were not for the lockout impact, our contribution would have been close to the historic or the 10-year average of about 50%. There's somewhat of a bump. The years that we had a superstar on the Cavaliers, revenue was good. We had sold-out games, higher attendance. Now that helps offset the county's contribution. We're going to settle back into a more historic normal with the county's contribution on Gateway. We're going to have debt service around $9 to $9.2 million per year for the next. We have another 10 years of debt service, and admission tax will play a large role as far as how much the county's general fund contribution will be. Next year, it'll probably be around the $4 million mark because now we have a full NBA season. We'll have revenue that'll accumulate in that pledge account and offset the contribution for next year and going forward. But it's very simple. The more games, higher attendance, the less contribution the general fund makes to this annual debt service requirement.
Mr. Chairman, Madam Chair, Director, could you explain the situation with the brownfield debt service, which provides us a favorable offset?
Madam Chair, to the council member, we also have an annual contribution for brownfield bonds, outstanding brownfield bonds. The county has a Series 2004 and Series 2010 issue. Works the same way. Revenue in the pledge account for that bond issue offsets the county's general fund contribution. In this case, we actually had higher than anticipated revenue to offset the county's contribution to debt service this year. So it is mostly offsetting the increase in general fund contribution for Gateway, about a $1.3 million decrease than what we originally expected to have to contribute on January 15th. We make all the pledge contributions on the same day, January 15th. We have four groups of revenue bonds outstanding: Gateway, Brownfield, Commercial Redevelopment, and MedMart. And we make our contribution to the pledge fund on January 15th per our bond indentures for all those bond issues.
Councilman Greenspan.
Thank you. Just so I'm clear, the Gateway deficit from what was projected in the budget is how much, just by itself? Meaning the deficiency between what was reserved and what the actual number may be?
Councilman, about 800,000.
That's its number by itself, is
Yes.
800,000?
That'd be $3.5 million in appropriation, plus we had assumed about 800,000 in reserve to cover impact of the NBA lockout. The remainder, 700,000 shortfall, is the pledge account balance was lower attendance, and 1 month of not making the playoffs cost about $300,000, and that was, the comparison year was 2010. So the hit is this year. Luckily, the NBA lockout impact is one time. Now we're looking at how does attendance run for the next few years. So more people that attend games, they'll keep a contribution from the county's general fund, again, to the average, which is about 55% of the total debt service.
Chair, the brownfield positive impact is 1 point.
It's approximately 1.3 million lower than we had appropriated.
So is the net impact a $500,000 favorable variance on that?
Correct, Councilman. If you're looking at what we had in reserve, yes, there's actually in a sense, there is a favorable variance because we had expected spending an additional $800,000, but we're seeing a savings or an offset from brownfield. So we're actually drawing down less than we thought all in when you factor in both brownfield, Gateway, and that reserve for Gateway.
So one went up, one went down, and they
Correct.
net out to a favorable variance?
It does. We're still drawing into general fund cash, but again, if you look at the net, it's a net positive as far as what we'd anticipated. The other thing I wanted to mention or clarify, we have a reserve on our budget reports for Gateway, and the bulk of that is actually the county's legal obligation to cover the outstanding debt service for Gateway Economic Development Corporation's bonds. And that's a legal guarantee that runs through 2014. So just a clarification on what that reserve, the $3 million of that $3.8 million reserve is.
Then, Madam Chair, what does 2013 look like then, if we were to project out now that you've got more stable numbers, I don't have the budget in front of me, so I don't know what 2013 is going to look like.
I would anticipate, Councilman, around a $4 million contribution. I think we have budgeted 3.4, 3.7, so we're going to have to ask for an increase most likely. And we'll undertake that as part of the 2013 budget update process. We'll look at revenue, if it's trending comparable to 2011, if it's slightly higher. The one thing we noticed from the high water mark a few years ago, a 10% drop in admission revenue or attendance is about a $400,000 impact to the general fund. So if we can at least hold the line on what attendance was last year, or maybe slightly improve, that'll benefit the county in terms of a lower general fund contribution for these bonds.
So the favorable brownfield impact, you only project to be in 2012 and 2013. Are you currently anticipating a continued favorable impact?
It's hard to say for brownfield. It depends on loan repayments, and we'll have a better idea later on in the year, the second or third quarter of this year.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Chair?
Madam President.
Mr. Rogers?
A question. At the end of 10 years, what happens? Does that facility become a county-owned facility?
Manager to Councilman Rogers, it does become a county facility, but the actual, if I understand this correctly, Gateway Economic Development Corporation actually owns the property or owns the facility. In a sense, it's being leased through Gateway as a holding company. In 10 years, the facility's paid off. The county, whether or not we physically hold title to the arena, the county most likely will be responsible for any major capital improvements to the facility, because Gateway Development Corporation simply doesn't have the capacity to fund any substantial financing to make upgrades or improvements to the facility. That's something we've been discussing already. There's been some early discussion. We're looking at maybe in the next 3 to 4 or 5 years as far as what is the plan for making improvements to the arena, what's the cost, and what would be the funding source.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I guess it's good timing to have a lockout then, if the brownfield's down.
It worked out.
It did.
But
Good.
it's happenstance, I think.
Okay, it's been moved, it's been second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Passes. Our
Thank you.
next item, Madam Clerk.
Resolution 2012-0013, a resolution amending Board of County Commissioners Resolution Number 103040, dated July 22nd, 2010, with authorized employment of the law firm of Weston Hurd, LLP, for legal services in connection with the United States Court Case Number 1:08 CV 01339 DCN, Angelo Lowe et al. Versus Cuyahoga County et al. By changing the amount not to exceed $330,000 to $363,100, authorizing the county executive to execute all documents consistent with this resolution, and declaring the necessity that this resolution become immediately effective.
Thank you. Move to adopt. A second?
Second.
Okay. Discussion. Oh, we talked about this at our last 2 meetings ago, and this simply is to increase some funds for legal services. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Passes. Next item.
Resolution 2012-0017, a resolution authorizing a water pollution control loan fund agreement with Ohio Environmental Protection Agency and Ohio Water Development Authority in the amount of $378,483 for the Jefferson Drive Lateral Rehabilitation Reconstruction Project, authorizing the county executive to execute the agreement and all other documents consistent with this resolution, and declaring the necessity that this resolution become immediately effective.
Move to adopt.
I proceed to send this to committee. We didn't suspend the rules for this item. It's going to go into the Environmental and Sustainability Committee. Can we have a withdrawal of our first and second motion? Okay, so done. So this is going to go to the Mr. Rogers Committee. Next item. 11 is consideration of resolutions for first reading and referral to committee.
Resolution 2012-0014, a resolution amending the 2011 annual appropriation measure by providing for additional fiscal appropriation from the general fund and other funding sources, and for appropriation transfers between budget accounts in order to meet the budgetary needs of various county departments, offices, and agencies related to year-end closeout activities in accordance with Resolution Number 2011-0320, and declaring the necessity that this resolution become immediately effective.
This will go into the Finance Committee.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
By way of background, in early December, the council passed legislation authorizing budget and management to make year-end transfers to square the accounts at the end of the year, and those changes have been made, and part of that legislation required the administration to then submit a resolution for us to ratify the changes that have already been made, which is what's done here. And while I don't have a great deal of concern about the changes that have been made, they've already been made, so time is not of the essence, and I feel it would be useful to go through this in Finance Committee, and it would enable us to gain a greater understanding of the appropriation transfer process. And that meeting of Finance Committee is going to be held on January the 30th, and I would encourage anyone who wants to gain a greater understanding of the appropriation transfer process to attend that meeting. Thank you.
Thank you for the background. Next item, Madam Clerk.
Resolution 2012-0015, a resolution approving the appropriation of funds for year 2012 based on the Statement of Appropriation status dated December 31st, 2011, and declaring the necessity that this resolution become immediately effective.
Thank you. This will also be referred to the Finance Committee. Next item, number 12, is involving executive session, and we're going to move that to the end of the meeting after public comment. Number 13 is committee reports and consideration of resolutions for second reading adoption under suspension of rules. I move that we suspend the rules pursuant to Rule 9D of items 13A through E. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor of suspension of rules?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, rules are suspended. Madam Clerk, first item.
Resolution 2012-0004, a resolution declaring that public convenience and welfare requires deck sealing of various bridges in connection with the Bridge Deck Sealing Program. Total estimated construction cost, $150,000, and finding that special assessments are not to be levied and collected in any part of the county's cost of said improvements for the items as printed on the agenda and the bridges in the municipalities listed A1 through 7.
Move to adopt.
It's been moved and seconded. Any questions about this particular resolution? We're going to have a series of resolutions involving bridges, and this is under the purview of the county, of all bridges, as I understand it, in the county, that we need to review these and actually vote on them. So any question? No questions? Moved and seconded? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, resolution passes. Item B.
Resolution 2012-0005, a resolution declaring that public convenience and welfare requires replacement of sidewalks on various bridges in connection with the Bridge Sidewalk Replacement Program. Total estimated construction cost, $1,250,000, and finding that special assessments are not to be levied and collected to pay any part of the county's cost of said improvements for the East Project for the bridges and municipalities as listed on the agenda, and for the West Project for the bridges and cities as printed on the agenda.
Move to adopt. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Passes. C.
Resolution 2012-0006, a resolution declaring that public convenience and welfare requires various replacements on various bridges. Total estimated construction costs, $150,000 each, and finding that special assessments are not to be levied and collected to pay any part of the county's cost of said improvements for the items printed on the agenda, C 1 and 2.
Motion
Move to adopt.
moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Chair.
Yes.
Could you please add my name?
Madam Clerk, please add Mr. Germana's name. Okay, passes.
Resolution 2012-0007, a resolution approving a participation and redevelopment agreement with Cleveland Housing Network Incorporated for the Emerald Alliance 7 redevelopment project located at 9431 Lorraine Avenue and 3147 West 95th Street, Cleveland, for the period October 10, 2011 through October 9, 2015, in connection with a Clean Ohio Assistance Fund grant agreement with State of Ohio Department of Development in the amount of $656,272, authorizing the county executive to execute the agreement and all other documents consistent with this resolution, and declaring the necessity that this resolution become immediately effective.
Move to adopt.
Second. Okay. Is that Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Or Mr., pardon me?
And others.
And others. Okay, so
we'll.
we'll indicate Councilman Miller as the second. So, Mr. Schron, do you want to talk about this?
No, I think it's pretty straightforward. It's, unfortunately, it's probably the end of the Clean Ohio Fund funding as it gets reallocated. But I'm glad to see that we have these funds coming into the county for the benefit of this project.
Okay, any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, resolution passes. Next item.
Resolution 2012-0009, a resolution approving an amendment to contract number CE 1100151, but Berea Children's Home for Community-Based Treatment Center Management Services for the period January 1st, 2011 through June 30, 2011, to extend the time period to June 30, 2012, and for additional funds in the amount of $1,153,828.80, authorizing the county executive to execute the amendment and all other documents consistent with this resolution, and declaring the necessity that this resolution become immediately effective.
Move to adopt. Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Schron, seconded by Mr. Gallagher. This particular resolution was in the Justice Affairs Committee, and it specifically addresses a contract with Berea Children's Home to provide intensive cognitive therapy for some of the juveniles who end up in the system, and it's proving to be pretty effective. So I ask for your support. Any questions? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Resolution passes. The next item on the agenda is committee report and consideration of an ordinance for second reading adoption under suspension of rules. I move that we suspend the rules pursuant to 9D.
Second.
It's been moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Rules are suspended for this item. Madam Clerk.
Ordinance number 2012-0001, an ordinance amending ordinance number 2011-0016 as amended, which established the organizational structure of the Department of Law.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. This item was in the Justice Affairs Committee, our last meeting for review, to initially include the risk management section and incorporate that into our law department for a lot of different reasons, which made a lot of sense. Since that time, our law director wanted to include additional delineation of what this department will look like and include, and I'm going to ask if we can hear from our law director briefly.
Sure, Madam President. Essentially what we're doing, there's no motion.
Adopt.
All in favor? Well, okay, we can go forward with this, but we're actually going to ask for the substitute, but go ahead and explain it, and then...
The request is that the substitute be adopted. Basically, the way it came to committee was that we will have two divisions, which is the risk management division and the legal division, because we were trying to distinguish between the risk management and the legal division. We didn't like, after the committee, it didn't make sense to have the title legal, because if it's in the law department, it's all legal. So we wanted to change the name from legal division to general, but then general was, so we put subcomponents of general in terms of what the law department does. And we did the labor and employment, open meetings and public records, budget and finance, legislation, contracting, procurement and real estate, environmental and charter and constitutional law as description of what falls under the general division. And that's what we did. But really the intent is that there is a risk management division within the law department, and the way it came into committee, the title was legal, so we changed it to general and just explained what the general means.
There was a question. Thank you. So initially this was less specific when it came to our Justice Affairs Committee, and the amendment should be in everybody's agenda packet, and if you have a
It is
chance.
on page 139, 140.
And so it basically includes the risk management division and also all the other divisions within that, like our law director just stated. So it was moved and seconded, and that was our substituted version, Madam Clerk, or do I specifically now need to substitute?
Correct.
Okay, so I'm going to move that we substitute ordinance 2012, 0001, and substitute it to include these changes.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Was there discussion? I'm sorry.
I just have one question, Madam President. I see in here that the employees are at will, are unclassified and they have fiduciary relationships. Will they need to be bonded?
The position of law director is bonded, and the law director himself, I have a bond, but not the individual employees within the law department. I mean, that would take legislation from council to make them bonded, but the law director, I am bonded, and there's a bond.
Madam President, so is it your opinion that your subordinates then are covered by your bond? Is that, or their decisions?
I know that
are
they
your
would be covered
decisions?
under my bond, but I would supervise them, and I'm responsible for their work,
Okay.
so ultimately you go.
Very good, thank you.
So we had a motion and a second, and we passed a substitute version. Do I need now
Madam
Yes.
President,
replacing?
the main motion was moved and seconded, but we do need to have a vote on to approve the main motion as substituted.
Right. Okay, so I'm going to make a motion to approve the substituted version.
We have a motion.
Well,
on
what
the
did you
floor.
just say? What do we need to do?
We just need to vote now.
I thought we did.
Pass the substitute.
Right, right, so we're going to vote on it, exactly. Right, that's what I was saying. We need to vote now in support or not support the substituted version that I've already moved and it's been seconded and approved. So we now are just asking to get approval. I move that we do. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. So we all understand that. Thank you, Mr. Law Director and Clerk. Next, item 15, consideration of an ordinance for third reading adoption.
Ordinance number 2011-0061, an ordinance providing for modifications and adoption of the county's Human Resources Personnel Policies and Procedures Manual to be applicable to all county employees and declaring the necessity that this ordinance become immediately effective.
Move to adopt.
Okay, this has been moved and second. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, this passes. The next item, 16, committee report in consideration of an ordinance for third reading adoption.
Ordinance number 2011-0049, an ordinance authorizing the county executive to establish an economic development fund for the purpose of investing in job growth and economic development in Cuyahoga County and declaring the necessity that this ordinance become immediately effective.
Move to adopt.
Discussion?
Yes, Madam President, I'd like to propose a substitute ordinance replacing the original ordinance with the substitute ordinance. And I believe everybody has a copy of that in front of them. So I would move that the proposed substitute ordinance be brought forth and replace the existing ordinance.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, it's been substituted, so let's discuss, Mr. Germano.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make an amendment to the ordinance 2011-0049, and this is in Section 4. Section 4 will be replaced by the following. Section 4, the Department of Development, CCCIC, or the appropriate approving authority shall have the ability to modify parameters or terms for any individual transaction in the $100 million Economic Development Fund, including but not limited to loan amount, interest rate, and time period. Any changes to the parameters or terms shall be provided to the appropriate approving body as part of the review documents.
Second.
Motion and a second to amend the substitute ordinance. Any discussion?
Yes, Madam Chairwoman. The purpose for this is to provide some flexibility, we believe, to the Economic Development Department. Unless you would like to speak to this, sorry, but if you're ready to talk to this, was at the suggestion to make sure that if we need a particular transaction or deal that needs to be a little more fluid at the time of closing, if the terms are such, or the interest rate, or the time payment horizon needs to be adjusted. This was at the suggestion, I believe, in cooperation with the folks in the Economic Development Department to bring this forward, and it was in complete agreement for the committee to bring that forward and out of the committee, and then this is what we're suggesting now for the full council.
Any questions? But I just want to say that the Economic Development Committee and the administration have worked really, really hard to come up with this item, and I think it's a great item. Can we talk about what this is?
I was going to, when we get to the full motion, I was going to do that. Yep, sorry about that.
This is the amendment, and we moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, this amendment has passed, and so
now that we're on, I believe at this point in time, we've passed the substitute has replaced, and we passed the amendment. So now we have the full piece of legislation before us, 0049. And I have to give my congratulations to our county executive, Ed Fitzgerald, for having the vision to take on what I believe to be a very courageous commitment on his part to take on such an aggressive goal. He brought it forth to the Economic Development Commission as part of a strategy, and the Economic Development Commission that was chartered under the charter itself. The 9 members then took this under advisement, brought it forth, and put forth a 5-year, first time ever business plan for the county that was passed out of the Economic Development Commission and then brought forth to this full council. And included in that full council was the recommendation to adopt this 5-year plan, of which one of the major components was that of, again, the county executive, Ed Fitzgerald, to bring forth the $100 million vision in regards to that. This council then unanimously approved the 5-year business plan, and then it became a heavy lifting to actually start to put that plan together and to carry it forth as far as the $100 million fund. My hat is tipped to the hard work that was done by Mr. Nathan Kelly for all that he did to bring this forth. There's no shortage of amount of work that he put into it, along with his co-partner in this, Mr. Larry Benders. I think that I also would like to congratulate our staff for working directly with the folks from the economic development from the executive's side, because I think that we recognize that though this is a vision of the county executive, it was necessary to bring forth legislation out of this body. And my congratulations to Mr. Nani and Joe and his team as how they worked in regards to this, Mr. Trevor McLear and Cleo Siren also for their participation, because together the Economic Development Department from the county executive and our legislative body, I believe, brought forth a powerful vision statement of how this is going to be brought forth. I think that I also want to congratulate everybody who worked very hard from the Economic Development Committee on this. My hat's off to you and thank you. And all those who voluntarily came in addition, as though they don't have enough meetings to come to, they also came, and we almost had council of the whole throughout the whole process. So I can't thank you enough for all the my contemporaries on this full council for their input in bringing this forward. I think that if you walk back through the last 3 months, you will see that the plan was laid out as far as its vision, its components, its 3 major components, and its 11 subcomponents as they get launched and going forward. I think that the vision of the Economic Development Department launching the first 5 is very exciting. As we had the folks from the budget and finance side bring forth how it's going to be funded to make sure that there's clarity, because I have presented this concept to a number of town hall meetings, and of course the very first question that comes up after you explain the vision is, how are we going to pay for this? And I think that the folks in the budget and finance department did an excellent job of explaining how it fits together, how it gets paid for, how it's going to grow, and how it's going to be servicing out the debt, which is the second major component. And then lastly, the tough questions, as we all know, gets down to the devil in the detail as you start to roll it forward, and that was the administration of how this plan is going to get rolled out, the steps, the procedures, the scoring techniques, the concepts, the bodies that will be actually doing the reviewing, because as we come forward, I believe in 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, one of the, I believe, monumental pieces of legislation coming out of this body will be the success of the 5-year business plan and then the subcomponent of the $100 million fund. Because with that, it's going to show how this county has done something different from any other county in the United States, clearly something different than the other 87 counties in the state of Ohio as we go forward. And I believe that there will also be a press conference on Thursday in which you're going to see the other extension of where this takes its vision, and that is to link it up with financial institutions as to how they want to participate and play a role, so we get the full force multiplier, as we used to say in the Army, of doing one component, multiply it again with another component, and all of a sudden we've taken $100 million of impact and really multiplied it. You push that together with the $7 billion worth of construction that's currently going on in Cuyahoga County, and my hat's off to the Economic Development Department for what you've done. So with that, I would respectfully request that my colleagues support this unanimously, and I'm proud of this piece of legislation.
Councilman Brady.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I, of course, want to commend the administration. This is certainly one of the most important pieces of legislation and programs that's been put forward by the new administration. It's unique and bold, and but this evening I particularly want to commend the chairman of the Economic Development Committee. The due diligence that the chairman showed was very commendable, and I think it's important for people to understand that as much as this certainly was the initiative of the administration, that the council has had a significant role in providing guidelines for this legislation, and also want to commend the lean but very nimble staff of the county council. It has much more of its fingerprints on this than anyone on the outside might realize. And so the council should be proud not only of the administration's proposal and supportive of it, but also of the work that the chairman of the executive committee member, the Economic Development Committee, its members, and the county council staff provided in this very important piece of legislation. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Madam
Brady
Chair.
is my co-chairman, and I congratulate him for all his work in this also.
We're going to go down the row. Mr. Miller and then Mr. Greenspan.
Madam Chair, I would also like to congratulate County Executive Fitzgerald and all of the people that the chairman pointed out, but also to particularly commend Chairman Schwan for his hard work on this. You played a very important role in bringing this from a broad general concept to a workable plan with details that have been fleshed out, and you also provided real leadership in resolving various differences of viewpoint that could have resulted in this getting bogged down, but that did not happen. So I commend you, and I would like to ask that my name be added to this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller.
Okay, Mr. Greenspan.
Thank you. Not to pile on, but I'll pile on. You know, oftentimes, Mr. Schwan was very good about giving credit, but he should take some credit for guiding through this process, not only as chairman of this committee, but vice chair of the county's Economic Development Commission, also Mr. Kelly and his staff, and the hard work that's gone on in the last week and a half to get us to this point today. You know, I think early on, and we all heard this, that there was somewhat of a misnomer as to the impact that this council would serve on the government as we were going through the formation and early stages of this government. But I would say that we define ourselves by not necessarily passing out the day-to-day, mundane, traditional legislation, but by the remarkable legislation that comes out of this body. And as it was stated, this is equaling the state of Ohio's economic impact just here in our own county. So this is clearly one of the most remarkable pieces of legislation this body has and this government has undertaken. And the residents of this county should be proud of supporting this new government. Thank you.
Mr. Jones?
I'd like to commend everyone involved in this project. It really is a monumental project. When I ran for office, one of the things that was a motivator for me was the fact that my business received loans and dollars from the city of Cleveland's $100 million Empowerment Zone program. Those federal dollars ultimately went back to the federal government. But we've taken our destiny in our own hands with this project, replenishing fund, and it will help the residents from small business to the biosciences and all in between. So it's an incredible project. It's one I'm proud to be a part of. And again, I commend everyone who played a role in it.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Your insight was very valuable during those committee meetings on your experience, real life. Anybody else? Okay, so at this point, I'm going to ask if anybody does not want to be added to this piece of legislation. Okay, so Madam Clerk, if you could include all. I wanted to say something to you.
Just I have one comment, though. At this point, the hard work is now ready to begin. So if you know of anybody that has a business or has a desire to put a business in, I have to close with a close, and that is talk to people, talk to your friends, talk to people outside of Northeastern Ohio, talk to people within here, and say this is the place to be doubling down. As Mr. Glover said when he was talking about the casino, Northeastern Ohio is where I'd be doubling down my bets.
Thank you, Mr. Schron. And as a final note, I too want to commend you and say how fortunate we are to have you on our council. You've been just immeasurably valuable to this process, and I know I've relied on your expertise and your experience, and you've added something to this council that you know is going to be memorable for years to come. And I can say personally that they struck a balance between objectifying this process and including fluidity to really allow for newcomers to emerge into our county as new business people, and that's what I appreciated about this. And just as a brief note, I spoke today at Park Synagogue, and they asked me how the council was going, and I said, you know, it's remarkable that we are, you know, so how well we get along and how much each of us has to offer to this process, and this is a work that exemplifies that. So very proud. Thank you, and I guess at this point we're going to call for a vote, correct? And yes, roll call. All in favor?
Are we doing
What?
roll call?
Yeah.
Okay. Calling the roll, Mr. Brady?
Oh, roll.
Mr. Germana?
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher?
Yes.
Mr. Schron?
Yes.
Ms. Conwell?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Rogers?
Yes.
Ms. Simon? Mr. Greenspan?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
And carries.
Okay, it passes. Work well done. Feel like this is anticlimactic now. Okay, so with that being said, we're going to move on to miscellaneous committee reports.
Yes, Madam Chair, I would just like to mention that the Human Resources Appointments and Equity Committee will not meet until February 23rd, so just one meeting in the month of February.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Miller?
Finance Committee will meet on January the 30th, which is next Monday at 1 o'clock, and we'll include the two items that were referred today. And also the Office of Budget and Management is going to present us the year-end 2011 official numbers, so we'll be able to see exactly where we ended up the year financially, which is always an important benchmark to take a look at. Thank you.
Mr. Rogers?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. The Environment and Sustainability Committee will meet this Friday at 1 o'clock.
Health and Human Services will meet as usual at 1 o'clock on Thursday.
Okay. I have a couple things. First is a reminder that our executive is having his State of the County address coming up on February 1st at what time, Mr. Tremiano? Do you have that?
I think it's noon.
Oh, here we go. At the City Club. So council people are invited and encouraged to attend.
Madam President, or Madam Chair, it's supported by the City Club, but I don't think it's physically there. Yeah, yep.
Okay. Our president, on behalf of President Connolly, as part of our rules, she wanted to just state that all our current committee chairs are reassigned. So we are still on for our second year as committee chairs. And thirdly, I wanted to ask if council wanted to meet on Tuesday. We don't have a council meeting next Tuesday, but if we wanted to address this interstate issue with the state, do we have any feedback on coming in? I mean, I would like to be here, and I actually want a resolution for discussion opposing the stoppage of this project, if that's a word. So does anybody to my right have a feeling about coming back next Tuesday to discuss this?
Madam Chair, I'm in full agreement.
Okay.
You should take a stand on this. It's kind of outrageous. And what time will that meeting be?
We could meet at 4 o'clock or 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock. What does the panel want to do?
If I can just interject, our clerk actually contacted me during the meeting and said she would like to work with you to schedule it tomorrow, if that's okay with everybody, when she's in. The committee of the whole meeting.
We're talking, Mr. Greenspan, about a committee of a whole meeting about the Interstate Bridge project, and I was discussing perhaps coming back Tuesday of next week. We don't have a regularly scheduled council meeting, so I wanted to see if we could come back on Tuesday to discuss this.
I think we ought to give the public announcement and give it next week. I don't see any, it's not going to change anything significant whether we meet tomorrow or we meet Tuesday. And this project, the construction wasn't supposed to start for years anyway, so we just wanted to make sure we get our voice on the record and be done in a timely manner. I would suggest next Tuesday at an open slot that we have.
Okay. 4 o'clock? 4 o'clock next Tuesday, we're going to, okay. Committee of the whole. Committee of the whole. And then I'll get with the clerk tomorrow. Okay.
Madam President, I'd also like to remind my colleagues that the Public Works Committee meeting will be this Thursday at 11, and Director Tewan will be discussing the 2-year moratorium that was announced last Friday. So I'd like to invite all of council, if you're interested, to learn more about that press release that came out last Friday.
Okay, thank you very much. And at this point, before we move to go into executive session, I'm going to ask if there's any public comment unrelated to the agenda. Madam Clerk.
No, Madam Vice President, no one signed in.
Thank you. So at this point, we're going to go back to item number 12. And this is consideration of a resolution for first reading adoption under suspension of rules in executive session. And at this point, I'm going to move pursuant to Rules 9D and 12A that we suspend the rules for 2012-0016.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, this passes. The rules are suspended. Madam Clerk, at this point, we'll read it for the record, and then I'll make a motion to move it into executive session.
Resolution 2012-0016, a resolution approving an amendment to a collective bargaining agreement with Teamsters Local 436, affiliated with the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, covering approximately 7 employees at the county airport for the period December 1st, 2010 through November 30th, 2013, directing that funds necessary to implement the amended collective bargaining agreement be budgeted and appropriated, authorizing the county executive to execute all documents consistent with this resolution, and declaring the necessity that this resolution become immediately effective.
Thank you. As the council knows and the public knows, there's certain times when, under certain limited circumstances, where our council can move into executive session. This legislation in discussion is one of those times. So at this point, I'm going to move that we go into executive session for purposes of discussing real estate and collective bargaining agreement. And at this point, I ask if it passes that the public please leave, and we will come out. We don't have a time period in which we'll be engaged in this discussion, but for these limited purposes, I move that we go into executive session. And we would need a roll call on this.
Calling the roll, Mr. Brady? Mr. Germana? Mr. Gallagher? Mr. Schron?
Yes.
Ms. Conwell? Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Rogers? Ms. Simon? Mr. Greenspan? Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Okay, we've been moved into, going into executive session, and we'll give the public a minute to leave.
Madam Chair, I'm just wondering if the law director could give approximately how long you think this will be for the public?
The labor part should be very brief. The real estate part will depend on the questions that come. So I would say a good half hour, maybe a little bit more.
Environmental sustainability.